Welcome to the podcast, our very first guest. That's not the first time I said that. MathasGames, and before we bring in Mathas, there's going to be, you guys already know what he's about because of the intro, but I felt like it was only appropriate that I brought Mathas on for the first interview because you're really, honestly, like my first internet friend. Isn't that good?
Aw. Oh, I miss you, man. I haven't done like stuff with you in forever.
We can
miss
always
hanging out with you.
we can always do stuff, but this is about you, man. I wanted to bring you on because you've been at this game for a while, a long while. So can you give people like a 30-second rundown of kind of what you do and what you're doing right now, what you're working on?
30 seconds.
Well, the Mathas rundown.
Too much is the answer. Right now, my current major projects are obviously MathasGames, which is a Let's Play YouTube channel. I also stream almost every day, usually 5 times a week right now on twitch.tv/MathasGames. I do retro PC reviews in a comedic style over at youtube.com/JudgeMathasGames. I run a D&D show called Lost Initiative, which we run every Wednesday and Thursday night. I'm also on another D&D show called Roll For It, which is every Saturday. And I have a podcast called the Iluminati Podcast that I do right now we're on an every other week schedule where we talk about fun conspiracy theories and aliens and ghosts and true crime and all kinds of stuff. That's kind of the quick, here's everything I do.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff. I mean, so let's just talk about, the first thing that you mentioned, you talk about your Let's Plays. So in terms of you ordered off Let's Plays, Twitch, your gaming reviews, D&D, Iluminati Podcast. Was that in any order? Is that your priority?
That is not my priority.
Okay,
if I was to prioritize something, I would struggle to either put Judge Mathas or Iluminati up at number 1.
Okay.
Then the other one would be right at number 2. It'll flop. Followed by, I would say probably my Let's Play stuff and streaming right there under that. And then my D&D stuff, they can go interchangeable at the bottom.
And that's super interesting to me because when you started 6-7 years ago on YouTube?
Yeah, about 6 years ago now. Maybe 7. It might be 7. But yeah, so 2011 was when my first video went up.
So you started as Let's Player, the history. By the way, if you guys want the origin story of Mathas, we did that in a previous show called Shooting Stars. But you started out doing Let's Plays, and then there's been you're very smart and very focused on what you're doing. So you deviated from that. Can you talk about why you started to do that on multiple levels?
Deviate specifically in what way?
So you started out your channel was just Let's Plays. And now Let's Plays isn't your number one focus. You still work on it.
Well, Let's Plays were something I did as a hobby. It was a fun little escape. And then even as early as 2013, I think, was my first scripted video that I ever did. And it was on my Let's Play channel, and I really liked it. But at the time, it was one of those moments where I was working full-time in the restaurant industry, so I needed to choose. So I went Let's Plays, and I did that full-time for a while. But once I started doing this full-time, it very much became a it's hard to find the word, but the creative challenge was gone because I kind of had figured out the grind and I figured out how things worked, and I was just kind of felt like I was going through the motions every day. And I was like, I need to do something different. This is driving me nuts. So that's when I really started to branch out. Judge Mathas was first, followed by the D&D stuff, followed by Iluminati. I just kind of pushed away from that, mostly because I wanted a way to it was twofold. I wanted a way to challenge myself again, in a creative sense, and at the same time, I wanted to see if everything I had accomplished on MathasGames was a fluke, and I had gotten just lucky, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it again if the opportunity presented itself.
So you mentioned you decided, you were kind of running out of gas or whatever. Was there a moment that you're like I can't do this anymore, or what was there a moment you're like, it's time?
Yeah, I'd say that moment came this past year where I can't remember. I don't know if there was a specific moment where I curled up in a ball and said I can't do it anymore. But at some point this past year, I burnt out. I was burning the candle at 4 different ends, and to an extent, I still kind of am, but at a more regular pace, I guess. And I just realized that I was getting frustrated. I felt like I was chasing the impossible of just being like, if I just keep doing this long enough, it'll blow up. That's not how it works. I had found my niche, and I just hadn't accepted it, and I was just bored. So that's when I overhauled MathasGames completely. Instead of doing 3 to 5 videos a day, I brought it down to 1 a day, and it was 1 highly edited video a day as opposed to 3 to 5 completely uncut videos a day. And I'm very happy I did that because I don't want to say it completely reinvigorated, but it made me care more about the content that was going on MathasGames. That was kind of the turning point for me to offload some of the work to an editor that I pay. Cutting down to one video a day also freed up a lot of time to really put my time elsewhere in other projects and still give the kind of attention I thought MathasGames deserved, since it's still my, a big chunk of what I make for a living. It's not exclusively anymore, what it was like 3 years ago. But it's still a big chunk, and I think it always will be, at least for the time being.
Was there anything was that a hard decision for you to say, hey, look, I'm going to offload kind of some of the creative duties to an editor, which we know is Dean Cuddy? Was that hard for you to do and let go? Or were you I had enough?
It was, but not for the creative hold I have over it, because Dean and I have known each other and worked together on and off for many years. I knew I could trust him completely to do right by the content. It was more of I think the difficulty came for me looking at it and feeling and accepting that this is going to be my lot, with this channel. It's never going to be the dream 3 million subscriber, huge channel, and swallowing that and accepting that and being okay with that was difficult, because I had to remind myself that it didn't mean I failed, because I'm still doing this for a living. I clearly didn't fail. But it's hard to kind of put down that dream of being I'm never going to be this huge YouTuber, but I still get to do it for a living, and I need to be okay with that. And that's okay.
I mean, and that's one of the things I love about you. You're super self-aware, but at that moment, you said, so was your initial goal to have grow your channel to millions of subscribers on YouTube?
It's hard to say my goal was, I hope to hit 1 million, but everybody has that goal of man, wouldn't it be cool if this channel made me a ton of money?
Yeah.
And it never was going to be that. And I think, it was hard to a point to accept that, but then that kind of emboldened me to chase other things and see what other interests I had that I could kind of put into this business sphere, I guess. It's tough.
So I want to talk about goals, because you kind of brought it up.
Sure.
Is what's your main goal? All this stuff you're doing, because it's a lot of different stuff, and there's some things you can connect and draw a line to, and some things you can't. But what's your internal goal, or what's you're this is what I'm working towards?
I don't know if I have an internal goal at this point. I no longer have a dream. I feel like I've grounded myself over the past few years to accept what I am doing. And my goal now is to just take what I'm passionate about and kind of reignite that creative fire. Again, something I lost in MathasGames for a little while ago was that need to. I didn't feel passionate about it anymore. I liked video games, but I felt like I was more chasing numbers than playing what was fun to me. And it was very clear, at least to me in my commentary, that I was trying to be something or chase something that was out of my wheelhouse in a way. I still do I still play the SEO game. I still, all caps in the titles. I tag it in a very specific way. The thumbnails are supposed to be catchy, but that's just the YouTube game. You still have to think of it in a business-minded way. But I've abandoned the idea of chasing the popular stuff and just playing what I want to play again. And that's, kind of brought it back, brought the fire back in a lot of ways. And as far as all my other goals, no, it's just take what I've always loved and be how can I make something out of this that's fun, that I can share? Because if I go back to me being in high school, one of my favorite things to do was sit down with my friends and just talk about video games and the things that we've done and the cool things that I like. And that's why I did YouTube, to start to share that with people and to go back and just remind myself that's why I'm doing this, and just do that. That's kind of my goal, to get back to that mindset. And I feel like I'm there again, which is nice.
I mean, and to your credit, it sounds like you don't have to do what you don't want to do on YouTube, because financially you've built things around it. That helps you with that freedom?
Yeah. One of the big things I think that I learned, I think a lot of us learned, those of us who were doing this full time anyway, about 3 years ago when the Adpocalypse hit, at that point I was relying solely on MathasGames. I had no other income. And when the Adpocalypse hit, that scared the crap out of me.
Can you explain to people what the Adpocalypse is, who have no idea what it is?
Sure. Adpocalypse is more or less dumb people doing dumb things on YouTube, scaring away advertisers, and advertiser money in YouTube tanking and never really ever recovering. It never really recovered. It'll never be what it was 4 years ago. So that was a big jolt of fear, because I saw my numbers were still fine and my views were still fine, but my ad rev had tanked super hard. And you can see like one of our best friends, Ryan, Northern Lion, like his whole content changed and it became more quote unquote family friendly. Swears, he doesn't swear anymore, that kind of thing. Because the Adpocalypse and the way the algorithm works now. So that was scary, and that taught me the lesson of don't rely on revenue from one place, rely on a lot of little revenue from all over the place. That way, if one thing dies, just because that spout turns off doesn't mean you don't have water hitting you from every other direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what spurred me to be like, okay, I'm going to branch out and do other things that interest me, things that I've wanted to do, things that I think I would be good at, even if things I don't think I would be good at, but I've been wanting to do it anyway, and just see what takes. And I've gotten lucky where almost all of them have make me money at this point.
Yeah, that's cool. And you talk about branching out, and like, if at any point you're not comfortable answering a question, we had a private conversation one time. You talk about branching out. Like, I feel like there was a time when you like kind of branched. I don't want to say out or off, but you kind of stepped out of the NLSS crew, kind of. Can you talk about that? Because I don't think a lot of people understand that.
Yeah, I don't even know did I talk to you about that?
We talked about it a little
Have
bit.
we talked about it? Yeah. I don't really have a secret because I love those dudes and they're my good friends. But one of the reasons I stopped showing up on the NLSS a lot is because I did not want to be stuck under the NLSS flag. I didn't want to be, and nothing against everybody who is, because that's fine. But for me personally, I've always struggled, even since I was a kid, like with self-worth and value and relying on other people to get me by in life. And as far as the NLSS goes, I didn't want that to be another case of where I'm only successful because Ryan, put me under his wing and took me to success. So I made a very concentrated, very, self-aware effort to be like, yeah, I'm going to be done really heavily involving myself in the NLSS and try and build myself as a brand separately. Move beyond the NLSS circle and find myself with as many different people as I can and just make myself my own brand and not be like, Mathas is part of the NLSS. And that was a very self-aware, concentrated effort to do that.
And I think like I just want to add in like the way and Mathas said it is like he's not like stepping away from, but he did it, and there's nothing against anyone else, but like he made a concerted effort, and I'm like, well, there's a reason why Mathas did that, and there's nothing wrong with being a part of a big group, but I find it interesting that you've done that, and like now your spectrum is very wide on multiple different fronts. But speaking of kind of that, and I want to take it to the next step, just one step further, because so you were a part of it was a year or 2 year podcast with Roundtable. Can you talk about?
It was 3.
Was it
almost.
3 years?
It was just about 3 years, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Can you talk about like your learning experiences from that and kind of what you took away from that, good things you learned in?
Yeah. It's interesting because I am, and I think you and I are very similar. It's why I think you and I are, kind of became friends as quickly as we did. We're very similarly minded when it comes to business. And I loved Roundtable and I loved working with all of them. And one of the things I learned very quickly about that particular podcast is that podcasts that are past, say, the hour and a half mark very rarely get very popular. Because people listen to podcasts, hour most, maybe an hour and a half. And the longer it goes, the less likely people are going to listen because it's more and more and more of a commitment. It's the same reason people don't like long YouTube videos on the whole. But I did learn like good structure of the podcast and, the importance of chemistry between the hosts. Like if you don't have good chemistry, how quickly that can all fade. But I also learned like, as far as like learning experience is concerned, the importance of leveraging and keeping track of numbers and very closely watching how many people are listening, where your audience is as far as a podcast is concerned, the importance of length and knowing when to cut it down, and the importance of working so hard on something and then trying to make money off of it and trying to monetize it. Because one of the things with Roundtable that we've all talked about before is we never monetized it beyond our Patreon. We were making pennies more or less for how much work we were doing for that podcast every week. And that was kind of frustrating for me, just because I kept looking at them like we are like the second or third largest gaming podcast in existence.
It was great. It was awesome.
And we were making nothing off of it. And that really kind of irked me a little bit. And I that's not something the other three are not aware of. I know what we've talked about it before. But that was something I learned too, is like to really, if I was to do a podcast again, I would want to have complete control over the numbers aspect, and B, when the time was right, leverage numbers and really try and push. We never had like merch either. Merch is big too. If you have like a recognizable name, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's kind of nebulous as to what I learned, but that's more or less the lesson.
So it sounds like taken away from it that you would have found or integrated more monetization to keep it going based on, because you guys had a lot of people watching. I don't know your numbers on the back end listening. I imagine they were great too.
Yeah, they were very good. One of the things that we learned a little too late was that most of our audience was audio only. But we were a live stream podcast followed by YouTube, but more than 2/3 of our audience were on other podcasting apps, and we never catered to those listeners. We always catered to the minority, and that was a mistake, I think.
How did you find how did you find out your audio numbers? Like, did you just kind of do some investigating? Like, were they
I more or less, I looked at the back end for a while. Eventually, like some of the responsibilities were delegated. I took the responsibility of just like looking at and analyzing numbers. So I had access to the back end. And when I was putting together everything over the course of like 12 months, basically, I was looking at them. I'm like, holy crap, like our numbers, if you look, 2/3 or more of who listens to us are on audio podcasts. And there's a site, depending on where you host your podcast, you can look aggregate all the numbers from all the podcast things. I'm sure you know.
What did you guys use to host, by the way? Do you know?
SoundCloud?
Okay.
No, yeah, SoundCloud.
Okay. So then,
yeah.
So then you took that experience. How did you take that experience, and how did you make your podcast, the Iluminati podcast? Did you specifically do things to dial in to make that like from the get? Like,
yep.
What did you do?
Everything from day one was taking lessons that I had honed from Roundtable, as well as other gaming podcasts, and just looking at where the majority listeners go. And that's why, well, the big thing was finding two hosts that I knew were going to be, at the very least, if they didn't gel with me perfectly, they gelled with each other. Luckily, like the two people that I reached out to immediately said yes. I mean, I'm good friends with them, and the chemistry between the three of us is phenomenal. I'm really, really happy with that. The second thing was to not take ourselves too seriously, make sure it's like a comedy first podcast. And then the big thing is hour and a half maximum. Cut it out. If I need to take a subject matter and cut it into multiple parts for over the course of weeks, that's what we're going to do. But no more than an hour and a half. Make sure people can listen to it on their ride to and from work or whatever it be.
Is that a feel thing for you, though, hour and a half, or is that like a numbers thing?
That's a numbers thing. A lot of research in other podcasts for specifically the Iluminati, a lot of research into podcasts in our niche that we were tackling, looking at where their numbers typically fell, how long episodes for more popular ones fell, and really kind of aiming towards that. But I think podcasts in general typically thrive around probably 30 minutes to an hour, but the topics that we tackle, hour and a half max is ideal.
Got it. You said something that kind of makes me want to double back for a second, and I don't want to get too far lost in it, but you said like when you're making the shift from MathasGames to Judge Mathas, you said you kind of had to ground yourself. What do you mean by that?
Ground myself, just remind myself that how do I word it? Remind myself kind of, it's going to sound so cliche, kind of where I came from. Remind myself that why I do this. Again, a lot of what I was saying before is I feel like I lost myself into the numbers, into the chase, into the hamster wheel of constantly trying to game the system in order to make more, make my numbers bigger, make more money. When I switched over to Judge Mathas and started that project, it was a good way to remind myself that, I started from nothing, and I will start from nothing again with Judge Mathas. I will actively make sure that I'm doing a separate channel for it, because I don't want to, I don't want the inflated numbers of MathasGames to leak into Judge Mathas and make me feel like I'm doing a better job than I am. That was a lot of what that was.
Like, were you getting cocky, or were you just saying just like?
No, not cocky. It's just I needed to stop and step away from the hamster wheel of numbers and just remind myself that I'm doing this because I love it, and not because I'm looking to make bank and become rich and famous and wag my schlong around at a convention. No,
but that's cool. I mean, like, and that's the thing, like, and we don't talk like finance or stuff like that, but like,
no,
we're at a point in terms of like, do you have like I don't want to ask for a specific number, but are you at somewhere now where you're like, okay, cool, like I can take more creative chances? Or are you still kind of working to a point where like, I want to shore up my base?
And you just mean in general?
Yeah.
I think like it's a little bit of it's mostly I'm in a place where I can be creatively free and do pretty much everything I can. But MathasGames is still, like I said, a good chunk, and I make sure I'm producing content there that, again, that I'm enjoying and I'm proud of and I'm having fun making, but also that the base audience that's there is expecting in a way and knows what to like. So it's a little bit of a mix, but lately I'd say I have a lot more freedom to do what I want with, again, doing so many different things that produce different, revenue streams. I don't have to stress about one.
Got it. And early on, when we talked about everything you have going on, you talked about now you're streaming on Twitch 5 days a week, which I didn't know. What sparked that for you? Was it, did you see it opening?
Just an interest. Initially I wanted to play some console games, and for me, I don't game unless I'm basically making work out of it at this point. It's just part of it, and I'm okay with that. I actually like stepping away and not playing games all the time. But there was some console games I wanted to play. So, and nobody on my channel wants to watch it on MathasGames because it's just not what that's there for. But I was like, Twitch would be a great excuse to work, but still play the things that I want to play. So I picked up, a little external, like card, more or less, so I could plug my PS4 in and stream. And it was really, really fun. I played through Detroit first. Then I went to like Spider-Man and all that stuff. And it's just been since then, I've just been streaming pretty much, 5 days a week. And now I'm playing AC Odyssey and I'm looking forward to Red Dead 2. So it was more or less like I want to play certain games that I don't usually play. So streaming is going to be my outlet for that.
When you do that, is there any part of you that's tugging and saying, hey, why don't I port this to YouTube? Or you're just like, you're completely separate?
Separate. I don't even think about it.
Why is that?
I just don't care. The other thing is part of it's playing the algorithm. If you put up videos that nobody's watching, it hurts your next day's video launch. So if for let's say for 5 days in a row you do 10,000 views a video, the next day YouTube's algorithm is gonna be like, okay, people are watching it, push the next video. But if you drop a video that then does 1,000 views or 2,000 views, the algorithm flags and be like, oh, nobody's watching. They'll send the next day's video out to less people.
Really?
And it's just, you play the numbers. So
you sound like you know that for like a certainty. And like, to me, I'm like,
I know. I've talked to people on the back end.
I mean, it makes sense.
It's annoying and stupid, but it's the way that YouTube now sends stuff to their subscribers. They look, the computer, it's not people, the computer looks at numbers, runs their algorithm, and then decides what they won't send out to everybody. So it hurts you in the long run to put out content that people don't want to watch.
Got it. Which cat is that, by the way? If you're watching,
she's walking around. Yeah.
So you said you enjoy stepping away now. Do you make a conscious effort, or what do you do to step away? Yeah,
no, I try just to not be working 24/7 anymore. It's part of the reason I actually take as many trips as I do. I know people make fun of me, but I travel like once every 2 months, sometimes to conventions, sometimes for personal. But that's my get away from everything kind of plug. On a daily basis, it's hard to say that I don't work from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to sleep, but I actively make conscious efforts to try and get away as often as I can.
Is there something that started that for you to be like, hey, look, I need to get away? Or like, how do you justify?
I was driving myself mad. I was going insane. Like, it was an obsession to the point of mentally, like, being mentally detrimental. I was anxious all the time. I had, Social Blade open 24/7. I was watching everything, and I was driving myself into a hole. Depressed because my numbers weren't what they were in 2013, which is stupid because that was like the boom of survival games, and that was lightning in a bottle moment of the kind of growth that I had at that point. It was a mental health thing. I needed to get away, or I was gonna just be miserable.
Did you pull yourself out yourself, or was there like someone that was like, hey, you need
mostly
to
myself?
Away?
Yeah, mostly myself. I needed to just, my dad's always worried about me, which is, he's very open about that. But mostly it was a recognition of just not sleeping well and having nightmares about YouTube and all that stuff. I'm like, I can't live like this anymore. You can live like that for the first few years because everything is exciting. But when you eventually plateau, and everybody will plateau to a point, not that there's no growth, you always want the uptrend, but the uptrend is going to slow down compared to how it was maybe when you hit your boom. You kind of just have to be like, okay, that's okay that I plateaued, but it took me a good 2 to 3 years to accept it and be like, this is that explosive growth is never going to come back. but I still have a very good sized channel and I still make good money, and that's okay.
I have to say, like, on a personal level, like, if you're listening on the podcast, you can't see it. You look like really good. Like, you look super healthy. You
It's
look
the lighting.
No, but you look happy. You know what I mean? Like, normally when
Yeah.
I've seen you, I mean, no offense, like, you look like drawn out and like super tired, but you look like healthy, man. So
Thank you.
That's awesome.
I appreciate that. It's also a constant effort to try not let my sleep schedule get away from me for too long before I have to reset it.
Well, we talked about like battling that. Like, I know, like, when you're creating content all the time, live streaming, like, you can go a little too far and get your sleep schedule messed up. And you've tweeted about it before. You talk about privately. Is there anything you've done that like keeps you on task? Like,
I try, and here's the long and short of it, and the truth of it all. I've always had a messed up sleep schedule since I was a kid. I've always slept a lot. It's just who I've always been. People think that I'm on drugs or I'm depressed, and it's just, man, I just have an awkward circadian rhythm. And then when I worked in the restaurant industry for 10 plus years, like, that hammered it in, like, that my sleep schedule was never going to be regular, because one night you're working till 1 a.m. and then the next day you need to be up at 8 a.m. and then you might not need to be until 5 p.m. the day after. So your schedule's all over the place. And so that's kind of how my body's adapted. So for me, it's a realization that my body's about to slip. I'm slipping into like 1, 2, 3 a.m. going to bed. And then when I really hit that breaking point of 4 a.m., I'm starting to go to bed. I look at my schedule. I'm like, okay, Tuesday, I'm staying up all night and I'm resetting, and I'll be back to normal then.
So you'll like stay up the entire day?
Yeah, I usually do that about once a month, once every other month.
And but that's just part of your normal cycle.
That's how I do it. Yeah. That's how I do it. And I'm on a good cycle right now. I'm like in bed at midnight, up at 10 a.m. and I'm feeling good.
That's awesome.
And it will slip. It will slip again, and I will fix it again when it does. So that's just how I live my life, man.
That's awesome. So I want to talk about like the future in terms about like
sure.
where you see things going. So I don't know, what are we, 10 years into this thing? I think from the start, 2008 maybe is when this stuff kind of started.
Yeah. 2008 I think is when YouTube, or 2007 is like when YouTube launched, or no, I think 2006 is when YouTube launched, but I jumped on first video 2011, so I'm approaching that 10-year mark.
So where do you see things like on a whole continue to grow? Where do you see yourself kind of like continuing to maneuver in the next,
I think
period of time?
I'm open to let things kind of grow as they are. If I had a hope, and if I was to look at trends, which I still watch, I think Iluminati has the most potential right now. That podcast has exploded in a way that I wasn't prepared for. And I ideally, I think I'd like that to really become something big. I'd love Judge Mathas to take off as well. That's one of those projects, though, that even if I only had like 2 people watching, I would just continue to make videos because I just love the process. And then I don't know where MathasGames is going to be in a few years. It could be that I'm full-time Twitch in a few years compared to MathasGames, because Twitch just offers at the moment a better opportunity to monetize. It's just an easier way to make that kind of money without the need for banger numbers 24/7. But that comes with inherent risks of relying on your viewers to give you money, which is also something you need to keep in mind. But ideally, let's say 5 years down the line, Iluminati is my main paycheck and things are going well there, followed by Judge Mathas, and then everything else is kind of in the air.
When you say like it exploded against your expectations, or what happened, or what do you think caused that?
So it's going to sound like I'm jerking myself off, but I'm not. It was just a quick view of the landscape. First of all, podcasting is in another boom right now. It's very popular again. I think a lot of that is because people are traveling a lot more nowadays, and for work and for family. So podcasts are very, very popular. Moreover, true crime podcasts and paranormal podcasts are also in its own boom. They're very popular right now, and not a lot of people realize that. And I've always loved that stuff. I remember looking up alien stuff when I was in high school. Like, it was just a fun thing I loved to do. So, I basically dug in early. I was like, this would be great. Let me reach out to Jesse and Alex and see if they'd be in, because I know Alex is a big conspiracy guy, and Jesse loves that stuff, but he's a huge skeptic, so he's a good balance. And they were in, and when we started doing it, and from episode 1, everything was really, really, really good. We were doing like the first 2 months, we were doing like 20,000 listens, unique listens a month. Right now, we're at 100,000 a month.
And it hasn't even been that long.
We've not even been around for 9 months. We've been around for 6 or 7 months ish, somewhere around there. We knocked out our first live show like 3 months ago at a convention.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we did a live show, which was great. It was at Indie PopCon when I went to Indie PopCon. We might be doing another one come end of December. We have merchandise already and people buying it, like crazy. We have an awesome logo, so it just fits on everything. And the numbers continue to trend up. We actually just booked our first advertiser for the podcast, and that's going to start in November. So like, just I look at him like I'm proud that I made the call, I pulled the trigger on this, and I'm super glad that Jesse and Alex agreed. And it's just been an upward trend ever since the word go, and it continues to do so. People are thirsty for more. People are always begging for more. Our subreddit is very, very, very busy. And when we throw up an episode, it's just like instant. Like people are just on it, like flies on poop.
Can you talk at all about your advertiser, or is that you have to wait?
It's a beard guy. That's all I'll say. It's a beard product.
So without like talking anything like super specific, like how did that come about? Did you start marketing, or did they reach out to you?
They reached out to us because a few people on their team listen to us.
Okay.
So they were like, they just started dipping their toe into the podcast advertising game, and they reached out to us and said, we want to do this. I ran it by Jesse and Alex, and we bounced some numbers around. And we locked down our first advertiser yesterday. I was on a call with him yesterday.
That's amazing. And so I'm guessing since what you've learned and moved forward, you handled the whole negotiation. You did the whole thing.
Yep. I was me, Alex, and Jesse bounced like what our rate should be because obviously we're still new. But after that, it was I was on the call yesterday by myself and I was talking to him, kind of figuring out where he came from and where I came from, and we just talked business for a little bit, locked down a deal. And that's it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm very, very, very happy. It's crazy because like it has nothing to do with video games at all. It's my first non-video game project, and it's probably the project that I launched that it was the most successful as fast as it's been. It is. Yeah, it's crazy successful very quickly.
But see, the thing I think that's funny about that is I don't think you would have that success without all your experience of doing everything else, content creation, doing other podcasts, So it's not like you like captured lightning in a bottle. It's like all this stuff you've done.
Yeah, led up to it. She's flying around.
I'm like, what is going on back there?
Got the zoomies. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a weird benefit of doing what we do on YouTube and Twitch. Really? You're gonna go crazy and play right now on a podcast? But yeah, it's one of the things everything we do is self-taught, right? Like when I came into this, I had no semblance of what numbers mean or business or any of that nonsense. All of that was alien. I was just making videos to make videos. Fast forward 7 years, and now like I can analyze trends and I can look at numbers and I know when things are successful, and I can just quickly look at like, spend a month kind of researching a podcast niche, like just a subject matter, and be like, there's something going on here. We should jump in early. Let's really try and make something of this. And besides, it's like subject that we all love, and it'll give us an excuse to read books about silly stuff like ghosts, and it'll be super fun. And it's, I'm proud of myself because I feel like I learned it, but don't be stupid. Like a lot of the reason we're here is because we got lucky early on. We got a couple good lucky breaks. I know you and I vehemently disagree on that.
100% disagree with that statement.
But that's just how I see things. But as far as like Iluminati is concerned, I agree. It's all the experience leading up to the launch of that thing, and being able to launch it and it not be like a puff of wind in the air and say, oh, good, this is our new project, and nobody cares. It was announcement of the new project and people friggin' cared, and it was great. So yeah, I agree. It was all the learning experience leading up to now has definitely been, beneficial. I'm sure it's the same for you.
What tell me about this live show. So what was the planning involved in that, and what was taken away from it, the experience like for you? Because you've been on you were like a guest on some live shows. Yeah, panels.
Yeah, I've done a bunch of panels over the course of the years doing it, but the live show was a little different in that it was still at a convention, but it was basically like doing the podcast live. We had a topic that I chose that was very specific to the area we were in, so it was Indiana focused. And we talked about like a haunted house there and stuff.
That's not an accident. You're a smart individual. All right, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, it was just me, Alex, and Jesse. Kind of, we got a room for an hour and a half. I think they booked us for, which was, it was the biggest room that they had, which was funny. We basically, we filled more than half of it at the time. Which, again, at the time of the live show, we were only 4 months old. We were very, very young. So yeah, we picked a topic. The people came and listened. We did 45 minutes of the podcast, followed by 45 minutes of Q&A or listening to their stories and then making fun of their stories.
do you feel like, what about like the interaction one-on-one? Do you feel like there are people there that came for the podcast? Do you think you gained, like you got some new listeners there? Like,
most people were there for the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
There were a few people there that were there for the names, like Jesse specifically. And then there were people there that were just there for being like, oh, what's this? And listened in. And as far as I know, everybody walked away really happy. And we were still dealing with, once we left the room, the audience was all outside and just wanted to talk to us and chat. So, I at the very least, I hope we picked up some new listeners. I don't know for sure.
For you as a content creator, to do something like that live that isn't in the gaming realm, what was that like for you? Was that like kind of like an internal fist?
It was
pump?
refreshing. Yeah, it was very nice. It was interesting again, it's an affirmation for me that I can do this. Not to get super personal, but like I know that's something I struggle with and always have, that self-worth of like, do I deserve to be doing this? Am I entertaining enough? Because you can't help but compare yourself to people within your sphere. Mm-hmm. And I look at someone like Ryan, for instance, and and be like, I will never be as naturally witty as that dude. He has an unnatural talent to be just funny out of the simplest thing anybody says. He can turn it into comedic masterpiece. And then I'm like, well, I'm not like him. Why am I here? I'm not funny. But that doesn't matter. Like I'm still sure I might be funny and whatnot, but I am an entertainer more than anything. I'm not the funny one on the Iluminati podcast. I have funny quips, but I'm like the host. I'm the one that keeps, gets the subject all lined up and talk about it and kind of prompt them. And that's fine. Like that's a great role to have. Every comedic person needs a straight man, and to be the straight man is fine. That's an okay thing. So yeah, it was like a fist pump of being like, I can do this. Like I can be what I want to be and not feel like I don't belong. So,
well, I think like, when people are listening to this, I feel like that's what is one of the things that makes you successful is you're extremely self-aware, accepting of that, but then you hammer exactly what you're good at, and instead of trying to be something you're not. Like you're not doing a podcast on G.I. Joes because you don't care about G.I. Joes.
Right, exactly. I think that's very important. I think a lot of new YouTubers, thousands and thousands and thousands of them, look at what they deem as successful and try and emulate it. So, Markiplier, PewDiePie, Jacksepticeye, they look at that and be like, I'm just going to do that because that made him millions of dollars. And it's like, that's not how the industry works. It's fine to start out that way because you always need a reason to start. But the important thing is finding your strength and then being like, okay, this is what I'm good at. And like you said, taking a chisel and a hammer and refining it and just making that your thing. And I know, like, for me, I'm very critical, not just of me, but in everything in general, video games and stuff. And that's where Judge Mathas kind of bore from, of like my need to critique while still making, lighthearted comedy out of it. And then, Iluminati, I love talking about weird stuff. And so that's, I take that passion and then, refine it and hone it and be the guy who keeps the other two on topic, or, the kind of like the focus of the topic. And yeah, you play to your strengths. Play to your strengths. That's like the most important lesson. And even if your strengths don't make you millions of dollars, you're still, even if you don't make a career out of it on YouTube, refining your strengths will always have benefits in your life in some way. Whether you take it to another career beyond YouTube and you do something else with it, you still took something that you're good at and you were able to make yourself better at it purely because you enjoyed doing it. And that's important.
No, I mean, you hit it right in the head. And like I said, like you've been successful now at a lot of different things in a lot of different areas, from Let's Play to scripted to a podcast that has nothing to do with the industry. But I want to talk about, and I got to fire you here in a little bit. I need honesty. Like, what do you feel is like one of your biggest losses you've taken, or one thing that you're like, man, I thought this was going to be good and it flopped? So that, because I feel like when you hear interviews, you hear like, he's great at all these things, which you are, but you got there because you took some L's along the way. Like if you had to look back and say, this was a big one that I took or that like affected me.
I mean, the easy one is one that I've already touched on. It was the complete change in the way I did MathasGames. That experiment of trying to that first push away from survival and doing other things. That was a big L. Like I in a lot of ways I killed my channel.
Give people context with numbers on that. So what were you doing with survival numbers, and then when you shifted?
Survival games in my peak, I was nabbing about 400 subscribers a day on my channel, and I was hitting like 10 to 15,000 views of video easy every day. And I was hitting 3-ish million views a month, which was amazing. Huge.
Yeah,
it was massive. I wanted to die. I hated it. I was so sick of playing games where I needed to drink water and eat food and build and just do the same thing every single episode, every single day, and try and make it interesting. I was going insane. So I made a very conscious decision at a PAX East after talking to some people of being like, I'm done with this. I'm just done. I'm done. I can't do it anymore. And when I got back, I made I didn't ease my viewers out of it. I just took a very hard left turn without telling them. And all of a sudden, content on the channel was no longer survival, but it was just random stuff. Honey Pop was the first big one. And I think that gave me a false sense of hope because that was a weird little game that fit my sense of humor perfectly. But after that,
was that the first one you did after you made
that was the first big one. I was like, oh, this is going to work. Sweet. But after that, after I started doing other games, the numbers tanked, subs abandoned fast, views dropped like off a cliff. And everything I was doing was failing miserably. I went from 3 million views a month to under 1 million in like the manner of weeks. I was panicking. I was freaking out. But I couldn't turn back because I knew if I went back, I'd be unhappy and I'd be miserable. So I just toughed it out. Eventually, everything obviously stabilized. But if I kept going down that survival game path, I'd probably be huge right now. But
would you be happy?
Exactly. Would I be a happier person? I mean, I was making very good money doing that, and I was miserable. I hated it. And it might sound stupid, like, oh, you're miserable playing a survival video game. You don't understand the kind of like mental exhaustion and frustration of doing it's like working a 9-to-5 job in a cubicle, doing the same thing. There's no joy anymore, and you're supposed to be joyful. There's no entertainment there for you anymore, and these games are supposed to be entertaining. There's a complete loss of all of that. And this was obviously before like Don't Starve was really as big, as fully featured as it is. RimWorld wasn't even a thing. Like all these really good survival games and simulation games weren't around at that point. It was all like garbage early access stuff that you were just scraping, looking for anything that was playable. So yeah, I would have been more, I think I would have been more miserable, and, I wouldn't have branched out. So that was a big L for sure.
And then, so
yeah, go ahead.
No, so you did that, and like at any point when you'd made that decision, like like what's running through your head? Are you thinking like, I'm gonna fold this thing up, it's over? Like,
yeah, oh yeah, I definitely thought my career was done. I thought I'd have to go back to the restaurant industry, and I was screwed. Yeah, there were a lot of concerns and panics, and I kept that all inside. I didn't tell anybody. I was like, I'm fine. And I think a lot of that is I'm happy I didn't tell anybody. I'm glad I kind of just internalized it and pushed forward, because if anything, I'm stubborn, and I won't abandon it until it's literally making me nothing. So yeah, but there was definitely like, I've killed my career. Holy crap, I can't believe it.
When you're looking at like in the face, like we're like, hey, this thing could fold. Like, what kept you going?
Oh, it was folding. It was folding fast. It was genuinely folding really, really fast. What kept me going was knowing that this is what I wanted to do. A lot of people aspire and use YouTube as a stepping stone. I don't. I really love this medium, internet entertainment. I have no interest in going beyond it, and I didn't want to lose it. I didn't want to go back to the life that I had before, where I was working crazy hours at a restaurant and I was miserable, and I didn't, waking up every day was a miserable experience. And the only good times were when I got home from work and had to go to bed early because I had to work the next morning. I was going to fight tooth and nail to not have to go back to that life. And I'm glad I did.
That's all. I'm hesitant to ask you this because I know we have different views on this, but
Yeah.
say there's a young Mathas or not an old Mathas, anyone right now that's listening to this, and you had to give them some advice about they want to start, maybe not on YouTube, but start doing something like you're doing, like making content they're passionate about. What would your like genuine, like no BS, don't swear, advice be on it?
Yeah. I'm trying to keep my mouth and my potty mouth under control best I can. There's a few pieces of advice if I was to go back or tell somebody now, because first of all, YouTube is a different ball game now than it was in 2011. Like, it's way more competitive, and it was already competitive in 2011. One thing I would say is don't overthink it. Just do it. Just start. Don't worry about the numbers. Don't worry about your audience. You just need to just do it as long as it's something that you genuinely think you'll have fun doing, whether you had an audience or not. Because eventually you will find an audience, whether that audience is one person or that audience is 1 million people. You will eventually find people who want to watch your stuff. And that in and of itself is incredibly fulfilling. But do not expect that this is going to be your career. I'm sick of hearing people say, just work hard enough and you're going to get it. It's not going to work that way. Not everybody on YouTube is going to become successful.
But
period.
Isn't that what you did? You kept, like, you got slapped in the face.
I am literally part of the 1% on YouTube who got lucky.
But see, I'm going to push you on that because, like, I feel like you started from nothing. You built it up. You made a right turn. It crashed. And you did it again. So, like, I would say that's persistence. That's using your head. That's zigging and zagging. But wouldn't say it's luck. But go ahead and say it's luck.
But the second time around, maybe it wasn't luck. When my channel was going down and I was able to turn it around and change things. No, I wouldn't put that to luck. But at that point, I had made connections. I had networked a lot. I knew that even if everything went down in flames, I still had a shot at the very least to do something in this industry, even if it wasn't on my own channel. So that kept me going, and I knew people, and I could work with people and do group stuff and all this other stuff that would stem the tide of bleeding the numbers that I was. But at the beginning, when I first started, I didn't have anything. I got, I met a few people here and there down the line, and, that kind of thing. But if I was, as far as like talk to somebody who's never started before, if you go in with the idea that you're going to be able to do this for a living one day, I think that's a mistake. I think that is not the way to go about it. Go in with the hope, and like, if it happens, awesome. Like, that's cool. But there's too many people out there that I see that are like, I've saved up enough money to do this for a year without working a job. I'm going to do it for a year. And if I don't make it, then I don't. I'm like, don't do that. Don't quit your job for a year and give up something steady and stable to chase Twitch streaming or YouTubing for a year because you're throwing away everything that you built. I didn't quit my job until the money I was making on YouTube surpassed what I was making in the restaurant industry. That's when I cut it all loose. That's just such a bad life choice. You're giving away a potential career for the chase of a silly little dream. Have your dreams, but make sure your dreams are plan C in your overall life plan.
See, I think that's extremely practical advice that I think you nailed, is like, do your normal job and then get this to grow and, don't throw it all away. I'm with you on that. But let me ask this, because I didn't ask you, when was your first, because we're going to wrap things up. You talked about not your second time, your first time. Where did you get the break, or where did you see a quick, an explosion or some growth early on?
I saw my first early growth with doing a collaboration with Ryan, Northern Lion, and Arum.
What about before that? I'm saying before that. Like, how did you get to that position?
You don't understand. Like, that was years of just grinding 10 subs a day to get to where I was. And there was no burst prior to that. Maybe that's wrong. Let me put it this way. I started doing StarCraft 2 commentaries late into the StarCraft 2 game. So it was a little late to be jumping in, and I was nabbing 1 or 2 subscribers every like 3 days. Then I hit upon, obviously, Project Zomboid. Everybody knows Zomboid's like the fairy tale Cinderella story of my channel. Found that, did a video, gained some traction, started doing Project Zomboid, and eventually I saw my numbers tick up to like 5 to 10 subs a day. And that's where it stayed steady until I started doing stuff with Ryan. So if I was to say my first numbers jump, I guess Zomboid would be my first numbers jump. Hitting on a game, jumping into a game immediately as it launched and had a little bit of an audience at that point, because indie games were not what they are now. They were very different. And kind of spreading the word of that game, and that first found me my first little audience.
But you found a crack in the armor just by testing stuff, and then you took a step back and said, this works, let me do more of it being Zomboid.
I was doing StarCraft stuff. I saw this Zomboid game. I didn't make a video because I thought it would make me numbers. I made a video because cool. And I was like, let's do this. And that was an unexpected chink in the armor, because I didn't know that it was going to be that popular. And that was the thing that set me down the path. I would still consider that luck, though, because I wasn't thinking numbers at the time. I wasn't thinking this is going to be big. I was thinking this game's cool. Let's do a video. And I did. And I got lucky.
Okay. We'll agree to disagree, but you brought up two more things I want to ask you about, because I think they're funny stories. One, can you tell the story about how you first connected with Ryan? Because I think a lot of people that haven't heard the story, by the way, Ryan is Northernline. He's a mutual friend. We do stuff with him. He's really funny. But how did you talked about that was important that you started doing content with him. How did you go from Zomboid to making content with Northernline, who at the time and still is a very big YouTube personality?
Oh yeah. Ryan's great. I love that dude to death. Ryan, I was a fan of his. I was watching his channel when he had around 60,000 subscribers. He was just doing Vanilla Isaac stuff and a little bit of indie stuff. But he had just started the NLSS. It was a baby. It was like less than a year old. That was back when they did like Q&A and news segments, and like it was a weird like pseudo podcast thing. It was very strange. But at the end of every show, they did a Q&A where they would go on Twitter. Ryan would go on his Twitter and look at questions that people asked him. He knew my name because I was regular in his shows, so he knew who Mathas was. And I had asked him, "Hey, you're gonna be at PAX East. Would you like to get lunch?" And Ryan, being kind soul, the kind Canadian that he is, said yes without thinking that it was gonna happen. He fully didn't expect it to happen. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, done deal, sweet. So I went to PAX East on a badge that my friend had. I didn't have the money at the time to go to PAX, and my friend lent me a badge that day. And Nick, the nicest man in the world, gave me his phone number at the time. And I texted him, and I was like, hey, lunch today, right? Like, whatever. And I guess he told Ryan, hey, Mathas is texting about lunch. And Ryan, I guess, sighed and was like, I didn't think he was going to reach out. So they told me, hey, look, we already did lunch, but hey, if you want to come hang out, we're going to go do the, we got 45 minutes. We're going to go play in the retro arcade. We're going to play some NBA Jam or whatever. So I met up with them, and we hung out and played NBA Jam. And then afterward, I was ready to say goodbye, but then Ryan invited me back to their hotel with they're going to have some beers and hang out. And the 45 minutes turned into 8 hours of just chilling and chatting and, getting to know him. He gave me his business card, which I still have because it's like important to me. It means a lot because that was like the beginning of something.
That's cool.
And then he said he took my email and he said, I'd love to have you on the analysis sometime. And, a few weeks later, he did email me, and I jumped on the analysis for the first time.
That's amazing. I didn't know the business card. That's awesome.
Yeah. We're on camera, right?
Yeah. Well,
yeah. I will cover his. It's probably not his phone number anymore, but he has his phone number on here, which is hilarious. But if you could see.
I didn't know he even had.
He did. This is back when it said it was on the back. It says 130,000 plus subscribers, 5 million monthly views.
Yeah, that could be worth something, man.
Yeah.
Well, it's worth a lot to you inherently.
Yeah, exactly. It means a lot to me personally because of what it represents.
So, and like, I'm not trying to get mushy here, but like, that's kind of, how I feel about you. You know what I mean? Like, I was just having fun in the industry. We connected, and you're kind of like, my Ryan, But speaking of, I have to ask you because I get this question all the time.
I see it on the subreddit constantly. I know it's coming.
So I just want to put an audio format where we can refer people. Can you tell people? So long story short, Mathas set up a lunch. Can you just tell the story, because I feel like you tell it better than anyone else.
Yeah, well, you and I met on Twitter. Yeah. You were tweeting you followed me, and I was like, who's this like verified person with like hundreds of thousands? Because I didn't know what Big Brother was or any of that nonsense. I was like, oh, he's like a select, what's going on here? Yeah. So we started chatting, and I was at that point in time, I was dabbling with the idea of diving into EVE Online. And you were tweeting at me about EVE and it being like a spreadsheet simulator because you're very into obviously space sims like I am. And we kind of bonded over that. We chatted about that for a few weeks or whatever, and you and I were going to meet for the first time at a PAX East. And I knew Ryan was going to be there as well, and I had liked my interactions with you, and I had met you briefly, and we wanted to do lunch. So what I ended up doing was very simple. I thought anyway that you and Ryan would get along, and Ryan was going to be there. I was excited to see him as well. So I just was like, hey, Dan, I'm going to be grabbing a lunch with Ryan, and he'd love to meet you. Who would you like to grab lunch with? Me and Ryan and Kate, I was going to be there as well. We can go down to like the station where there's like a bunch of fast food places. We could just sit, chill, and chat about whatever. And you were like, oh, that's awesome. You knew who Ryan was, right? Like you knew of him, Northern Lion. And then I went to Ryan. I was like, hey, Dan Gheesling. He's like he won like Big Brother. He's like a big celebrity, like real reality TV celebrity. He's doing video game stuff now on Twitch and YouTube. He'd love to do lunch with us and grab lunch. Would you be game? And then Ryan was like, yeah, that sounds cool. Can Kate come? I was like, yeah, obviously Kate can come. That's fine. He's like, sweet. So we'll go grab lunch at Union Station right down the road. And that was the end of it. And
well, why did you do that? Why did you do that?
Because I thought the two of you would get along really well. I liked you. Your sense of humor fit very well with the rest of ours. And you just seemed like a genuinely good guy. And I knew Ryan, and I genuinely thought that the two of you would just get along, and you did. So I just had you guys come to lunch, and we grabbed a bite to eat, and you guys chatted, and that was the end of it. And I didn't think any of you were going to bring up who invited who, because you guys were brand new to each other.
Well, good. I'm glad that's finally out there. But Matt, is like, I can't stress to you enough. Like, you think about. I mean, it's crazy to think how long you've been doing this and how long ago we met. But
it is nuts. We've known each other for years.
It's crazy. But I just really it was important to me. I knew during the podcast I was going to start bringing people on, and there was no question for me who I wanted to bring on.
I appreciate that,
because you've been so instrumental. For me, it was like, we connected, we got along. I didn't even know what collaborations were until we started doing stuff. And you just really helped me a lot. And, I'm just so happy to have you on and just share your success and what you've learned, because I think a lot of people, are really interested in you. And there's not always a place or a format for you to kind of tell your story. And
I appreciate it, man. It's just that whole crew has been very instrumental into how I do things and how my career has been shaped over the many years. So, and I genuinely hope there's many more years to come, because this is my dream job. This is all I want to do, and I hope it never stops.
For you, Mathas, I don't think it ever will, man. You're very crafty. We'll you're very smart.
If it does, you owe me, and you need to save me.
But let me ask this. So as we wrap things up, where do you want people to find you? What do you got going on? Tell them exactly where people can find things you got going on.
You can find me pretty much everywhere on the internet. If you want my podcasting stuff, just search for Iluminati podcast. It'll pop up pretty much everywhere. That? Yeah, it's just Iluminati with CHIL in the beginning. Iluminati. Done.
And what's the story behind the name?
We just kind of bounced around fun, lighthearted name. Conspiracy Theory podcast, and we all settled on Iluminati. Before we knew, it was also apparently a Yogscast streaming group. There's 3 people in the Yogscast that form the Iluminati, and they do video games on Twitch. Had no idea when we made that name. People think we ripped them off. That was not the point. But we're very different topics, so we don't.
Did you run into any problems with that?
No.
Okay.
Other than a few people being like, "You thieves," and I'm like, if you really think we're video game people, then you're confused, because we're just talking about ghosts.
So Iluminati podcast.
Iluminati podcast. YouTube.com/JudgeMathasGames for my scripted stuff. If you want to see me play video games, YouTube.com/MathasGames or Twitch.tv/MathasGames. Daily videos on MathasGames, and then
not Mathas StarCraft. You got rid of it.
No, I got rid of it, dude. I got rid of that finally. The branding name, great. And if you want to see me do tabletop Dungeons and Dragons stuff, you could see me at twitch.tv/Lost Initiative Show, which is my baby. That's every Wednesday night and Thursday night. And then on Saturdays, you see me at twitch.tv/Roll For It, where I am running a game of Vampire the Masquerade over there under their banner, which has been fun.
MathasGames, you're a very, very busy man. I appreciate you taking time to come on the podcast, man. Hope you enjoyed yourself. And I hope you guys learned something about Mathas, because you know what? I'll tell you what, I'll now never forget. You carry around that card in your pocket.
That's always cool, there. That'll never go away.
Well, cool, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been great.
All right, later, buddy.